Yeah, it's been several years na parang naging metaphor ko yung bamboo camera. The bamboo camera symbolizes yung point of view natin. Your personal point of view or your local point of view. As a teacher in UP Mascom, na-observe ko na a lot of our potential directors and film people, malakas ang influensya sa kanila ng Hollywood. Na. As a matter of fact, every beginning of the semester, I would have I would tell the class, walang pasok ngayon for 3 weeks. Everybody, pick up your video and do a 5-minuter para alam ko kung anong hinahabol nyo dito sa course na ito. So we would not meet and then after a month, we would get together and makita mo yung mga gawa nila. And for 6 successive semesters, wow, 85 to 90% of the films had some rape scene or barilan or bugbugan, all these formula kind of eksena, which was a good starting point for our semester, di ba? Okay. Napansin nila, wow. And then especially if I frame it in that context, are these the only stories we can tell? And they suddenly realized that, wow, if 85% of us did this kind of film, what does it say? And then I tried to translate it for them. It's not your fault, folks. Basta this is the kind of menu you had all these years. Yan ang mga nakikita nyo sa TV, sa malls, and maybe it's also what you read in the newspapers. Parang these are the spicy stories. And almost automatically, you're always framing life also as an average person or as a potential filmmaker. You're framing these as the wow stories. So, you don't realize that it's a formula that has been adopted by us, by our producers, by our TV stations, na galing sa Hollywood, yung formula na para pumatok sa takilya, PST, patok sa takilya films, kailangan ganun ang mga kwento. So, as a starter, suddenly they realize that that's the normal, I won't use the word trend, but it's the orientation that people have to tell that kind of a story, and until they are made aware of it, then maybe automatically they'll follow that kind of formula. So with that as a starter, are there any local stories that you may have overlooked? Or are you reluctant to tell those stories kasi they might be boring, or they might be uninteresting, or they might be unsellable? Di ba yan ang mga criteria for the hot story? And I think it's good for them to realize that, they can tell a story that's maybe happening in their own family, in their own barrio, in their own barangay. And it's the way you frame it. In the end, it's the way you frame it. It can make it interesting. And if it comes from your sariling duende, then you're really coming up with an interesting framed story, no? So the bamboo camera has become for me, besides that it's a metaphor for telling the story from our local point of view. I've been giving bamboo camera awards every 2 years, no? Basta every 2 years meron akong binibigay or ina-award na either a film or a filmmaker and his film, let's say na hindi siya tumutok sa formula, na it comes from really a unique POV. It was framed by his own duendes. I encourage my students to work with their sariling duende. Sometimes, alam mo, mga young filmmakers come up to Baguio and they want to hear some hot tips from the old man. Oh, Sensei, can you tell us what lens do you use or what camera do you use? Hey, I'm sure you guys, you young generation, are much more familiar with the latest technology. Wala akong maibibigay na payo sa inyong ganun. I can only tell you how my duwende, yung sariling duwende ko, paano siya nagising, and how every one of us has a unique duwende who can tell a unique story. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that's what the world is waiting for. I'm not talking about producers. I'm just saying that the world is waiting for your unique story, and hopefully that unique story is the eye-opener. It's the universal, it has the universal elements na pwede mag-relate sa inyo yung audience. How big that audience is, it doesn't matter. But we're not talking about the big super Hollywood audiences. No? Once you're aware of your duende, I think you can have a certain confidence in your storytelling. You don't have to cater to those techniques that will ensure that the cash box rings every time that film is shown. But you can be assured that it will resonate with the kind of people who are really looking for stories that matter. So let your story come from your duende. You can't go wrong.